What's up guys, my name's Liam, and today we're going to be doing a quick run through on a lot of the most current Mchose gaming mice. I reviewed some of their older models on my channel, but some of them have just a bunch of different variants. So I'm going to try and review all of the latest versions of each one of them, let you know my overall experience, what they compare to, and hopefully it'll help you decide if any one of these could possibly be the perfect gaming mouse for you. So let's check it out. And before we get started today, I did want to let you know that these were sent out to me. However, everything you'll be hearing in this video is going to be my own words and my own opinions. All right, so first off, let's go ahead and start out with the G3. This is a mouse I have not had a chance to take a look at on my channel. The skate design or layout on here, I actually really like this design a lot more compared to the original G305. And down here, you do have the dongle storage, where this version, the G3 Ultra, it is using the Realtek chip. And this nano receiver right here, it does have the capability of doing up to an 8K wireless polling rate. And if you plug this in, this even does do 8K wired. Over here on the left-hand side, this is where it allows you to choose between the different modes. I believe 1 is going to be the receiver itself, and then 2 and 3 are 2 separate Bluetooth functions. So if you are looking for Bluetooth connectivity, this also does have that dual option as well. And then over here on the right-hand side, you do have your on and off button. So when it comes to the feeling of this mouse in the hands, it honestly does feel really solid, and it kind of feels to me like they try to make it as similar to the G305 as possible. I was a little disappointed, to be honest with you, when I got this in my hands. And the reason being, I mean, if you're just a huge fan of that mouse and how it feels, then maybe the transition isn't going to be that much of a difference for you. And perhaps some people might prefer something like that. But I was kind of hoping for the exact same or a similar shape with kind of some more updated features on it. So this is featuring still the like chunkier style of plastic, even though it is more lightweight, but it does kind of have just that textured feeling, thicker, chunkier plastic on it. So even though this is painted, the coating on it, it doesn't add any type of additional noticeable grip. Not at least for me. And even if I were to get my hands wet, I did notice it felt a little bit more slippery. Even when I was comparing it to my G305, the black version, this one just felt a little bit more grippy to me. For whatever reason, I'm not sure if it has something to do with this paint and my skin type or whatever, makes it feel a little bit more slippery. So even though they did try and clearly get this as close to this mouse as possible, again, I kind of wish that they went on their own route and updated it to be something more similar along the lines of the build and weight of like the L7, for example. And we'll jump into those mice here later on in this video. But aside from that, this is using Omron mechanical switches in it. The click implementation on this is all right. Nothing really to write home about. It kind of does get some teetering here on mouse 1 and 2. You don't get any side-to-side play though, just that noticeable teetering feeling. But the click implementation on this, it does feel pretty decent from front to back. And it doesn't feel that far off from just the 305 in general. You kind of just get these clunkier style of clicks. Not a whole lot of pre-travel or anything like that, so the clicks don't feel too bad. The center scroll on this does have pretty light steps. You can notice yourself getting stuck in between the steps if you're really light on it, but the center scroll click is actually pretty easy to spam. Then coming over here on the side buttons, a little bit of play, and if you're to push in here, you can actually push these quite a bit into the shell itself. And kind of just in similar fashion to the G305, the buttons kind of have a similar layout, and they do sit actually pretty flush with the shell itself. I kind of wish that they made them so that they protruded a little bit more, but aside from that, you don't really notice a whole lot of back and forth or anything like that, since when you do push them, they kind of just go into the shell. So again, all around, you know, this just kind of feels like a underwhelming mouse to me. It's all right. Not that it's bad or nothing like that. I just was kind of hoping for it to be updated and just kind of feel like a little bit more of an improved version. But it is nice to have a wireless version of this mouse that not only is lighter, has solid balance, and you don't have to constantly worry about changing out the battery on it. It kind of has this top shell up here, but I didn't notice that I was able to remove it, so I'm not sure if you can, whereas the old G305 store the dongle in there, and that's where you'd have to put the battery inside of it. So even without a battery, in this mouse. Dropping on my scale, as you can see, 74.3 grams. Obviously, if I put a battery in there, it'd make it more heavy, whereas this one is coming in at about 66.6 grams. But as far as I can tell, really the shapes of these, they do feel incredibly similar together. Not a whole lot of difference between each one of them. So let's just go ahead and we'll drop the shape comparison between both of them. Next up, we're going to talk about the A5 Ultra and the AX5. I've already talked a lot about these different models of the AX5 on my channel. This copy, however, the white version with the blue buttons, this one is using the Realtek chip. But the one thing I really do like about this one is this does have the Omron opticals in it. So out of all of the versions of this mouse that I have tested out so far, this one is my favorite. It does have the same type of skate design with this removable bottom skate right here. The good news about this is when you do open this up and take it apart, there's no screws under here, under this front top skate, and you only have to undo these screws in the back, even though the shell on the front of this is actually kind of hard to separate it if you did want to open it up. But the layout is all the same. You got the DPI button over here, on and off button, and this also does have the Bluetooth mode. I do really like the skate design on this. I don't notice any issues with this movable skate or this removable skate down here in the bottom. It feels really solid. I don't notice like shifting on me or anything like that as I'm using it. But it does come with these black harsher style skates, which is going to become a really common theme. It comes on all of these mice. I'm not a fan of these skates. I do feel like they're a lot harsher feeling and they give you a little bit of a more slower and scratchier feeling. But aside from that, the build on both of these is similar to the older versions. As far as the general build quality and the coating on these goes, this just kind of feels like a plastic to me. I don't notice any type of additional coating on here. So if your hands were to get sweaty or get wet, this does feel a bit more slippery. The A5 does come with grips, but honestly, the grips didn't feel very impressive to me. That come out of the box for us, they felt a little bit more slippery. The same thing kind of goes on this one. It doesn't have a grippy coating to me. It's almost kind of like a slipperier feeling, especially the wetter that your hands get. This one also did come with grips, but the grips that did come with the AX5 Pro Max, they felt a little bit more premium and a little bit more grippy to me than the ones that did come over here on the A5. But as far as the build quality on these go, both of them have felt really solid to me. I haven't noticed like any major bending or anything like that. Even over here on the plastic, if you were to push really hard here in the middle, you get just a very small amount of bending, but both of them have felt pretty solid to me. The one thing about the older copies of this, it did come with the Huano blue shell pink dots, which I do prefer over these Omron mechanical switches. So I kind of wish that they would have left the Huano blue shell pink dots in here, or perhaps put the Omron opticals in here. I think it would have made this a little bit more appealing. But the build on these does feel pretty good. I do feel like the build on this AX5 does feel more solid than just my original A5. The pre-travel on this feels pretty good on the click. You do notice a little bit there, but you do get a little bit more play up here in the front, and you get some side to side there. I'm not sure if you could see that as you're pressing down on it. The right button feels a little bit more stiff, where I get a little bit more play over here. But I mean, just in general, the clicks on this don't feel too bad. It actually does feel pretty light, no matter where you click it from, even if you click it all the way back here in the back. So again, the clicks don't feel bad on this, besides just a little bit of play I get there. There's not like any major noticeable grinding that I noticed on mouse button 1 or anything like that as I was using it. But the scroll wheel is kind of the similar type of feeling on all of these mice. You can get stuck in between steps if you're really careful there, but the center click on this is actually pretty spammable. And then over here on the side buttons on this, they do actually feel pretty good. Just a very minor amount of playback here in the rear, but they're tensioned pretty nice. So you don't get a whole lot of pre-travel. There's a bit of post-travel there, where you can see I'm not even actuating the switch there. You can just push it in, but it does hit a solid wall back here, and there really isn't any noticeable side to side. Even the same thing over here on at the front side button. So the build in general on this, it does feel pretty good. I kind of wish that they stuck with the Huano blue shell pink dots, or they went with something like the Omron opticals. And to be honest with you, just the build on the AX5 Pro Max, It does kind of just feel like a step up over the A5 to me. Just in general, the clicks do feel better since this is using the Omron opticals, and you know, it's got that magnesium feeling, so it's kind of has the tighter feeling buttons where you don't get a whole lot more play when you're to click here in the front. They're kind of giving me some kind of a pingy type of a click sounding, but again, the implementation on this all around, no matter where you click it from, it feels pretty solid from front to back. I don't notice any major left to right or rocking on them. So the clicks on this, again, feel like a little bit of a step up from the A5. Scroll feels pretty similar though. You get the same identical type of a feeling. But even though the side buttons on the A5 feel pretty good, they kind of just feel like a little bit of a step up over here on the AX5. They just feel all around a little bit more tensioned. Really nice and snappy, lightweight. Not as much post-travel, you just kind of hit a dead stop right there, and you don't hardly get any play. So I do feel like the build quality compared to some of my older models on this does feel more improved, more refined, and all around it feels like a pretty solid option. So this has been my favorite AX5 out of all of them so far. And I've already talked about this shape before in the past. This pretty much feels very similar to a Logitech G Pro Superlight Mini. Pretty much a similar type of a curve profile. And the A5 and the AX5, these are the exact same shape, but not a whole lot of difference here when it comes to the overall shape, like I had mentioned. It does feel like a smaller version, however. All right, so next up, we're going to talk about some of their newer versions of their mice and really what they're doing on the A7, the M7, and the L7. I really have become a huge fan of these mice, and I really do feel like these are a proper step up in the right direction. So when it comes to the A7, this is the Ultra version. They do have a couple of different models. I'm not going to go off and list all the specs of these. The Ultra model is the highest end model. It does come with a 3950 sensor. These are all using the Realtek chip inside of it, and we'll go over the performance on all these a little bit later on. But the skate design on this, I really do like a lot. Obviously, this is very similar to the G Pro X Superlight, which has one of the best skate designs out there, as it just feels like a really solid and stable mouse. I do know that Unusual Way Sports does make aftermarket skates for these mice, so I do plan on picking those up in the future. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get the Magic Ice skates for all these, as those are my favorite. But you do have storage for a receiver down here in the bottom, and then a DPI button over here and power button over here. So just the general overall feeling of this mouse in the hands has honestly been feeling very impressive to me. I don't get any noticeable creaking or anything like that. It's felt pretty solid. Now, all of these mice are going to be those more lightweight, thinner type of a plastic version. So if you're to push really hard here in the middle, it does feel like a thinner plastic. You can get some bend in there. The way that I grip my mouse, or I've been playing with it, nothing that I've noticed too much being an issue. But coming up here in the front, even if I were to squeeze really hard up here in the front, I don't get any like really noticeable bending here with the plastic on the outside that is going up against the buttons themselves. All these, they also do have a coating on it. And the coating honestly feels really good on these. It does feel nice and grippy for me. This is also using the Omron opticals in it, and the click implementation on this is really good. I don't get a whole lot of pre or post travel there once I click it. Just a little bit of post travel, but as you can see, I can't even make any contact with the base down there. If I were to push it in the front, you can get that button to bend and make contact with it. But as you can see there, I'm not getting any type of play left to right, not any noticeable teetering or anything like that. And this kind of has a similar feeling to a lot of these Omron optical mice, where the clicks feel a little bit lighter here in the front. They do get a little bit heavier here in the back. But aside from that, the click quality on this honestly has been feeling pretty solid. Again, I've already talked about these scrolls. They all feel the same. If you're to be easy with them, you can get them stuck in the center. This one actually does have a lighter center click though, where it is more easily spammable. And one thing that's actually been pretty impressive on this mouse for me has been these side buttons. I'm getting like no play even back here from the rear. You go straight into a click, almost no pre-travel. If you're to push in there, you can get a little bit post-travel after you actually activate the button, but it doesn't go too far into the shell. And there is no noticeable rocking back and forth. Clearly, the shape of this is pretty much a clone of the Logitech G Pro Superlight itself. And the one thing about this A7 Ultra mouse is they did put a bit of a bigger battery in here. It does have a 500 milliamp hour battery in here, which for some people, they may like that. But I kind of wish that with the A7 and the M7, which we'll jump into next, I kind of wish that they would push these a little bit further. I like to see them come out with a version, maybe with a smaller battery, maybe come out with an extreme version of this, where they were to try and get the 3950 sensor in here, just kind of max out the performance and try and get the weight down just a little bit more all around. But the balance on this has felt really solid, front to back and left to right. So throwing it on my scale here again with that 500 milliamp hour battery in it, looks like I got it coming in at 57.4 grams. So here's just a quick rundown of the shape between both of these, putting them next to each other. As you can see, the curve profile in front to back, not really that far apart from each other. Looking at the curve profile from the top mid down to the sides. And then here is a shot of them sitting next to one another. And I will go ahead and compare it to the A5 and again the AX5 Pro Max, being the exact same shape between both of these. Everything about these seems like it's really similar, just with the overall shape, with the A5 and the AX5 being a smaller version of the A7. All right, next up we have the M7 Pro and the M7 Ultra. The build on these, they do feel very similar to the A7. Actually, they do feel pretty much identical and a similar type of a layout. Here's the Skeet design down here at the bottom. You do have dongle storage down here, on and off button over here on the right side, with both of them having a Bluetooth mode. And then they both have this DPI button over here on the left side. And really the only differences between both of these is that the M7 Pro does come with a 3395, whereas the M7 Ultra does come with a 3950 sensor in it. But the build on both of these does feel identical. Again, I haven't noticed any issues with any type of creaking or anything like that. The build quality on both of these has felt really solid. Again, it does kind of have that thinner style feeling of plastic to make it a little bit more lightweight. If you're to push really hard here in the middle, same thing, you can get some bending going on. Coming up here at the front though, squeezing on these really tight, you don't notice any major bending up here in the front. So the shell integrity on these does feel good for the most part, as long as you don't squeeze on these as hard as you can. But both of them have that same coating, and they're both using the Omron opticals in here. And you just get kind of a same feeling on the click implementation on them in general. Not a whole lot of play, even on this one. Even if you come up here in the front, you don't get a whole lot of pre or post travel there, so pretty solid. You still can bend down and make contact if you're to click in the very front, not so much in the center. And I do feel like the click implementation on this one, it doesn't really get that noticeably heavier back here in the rear, just kind of a lighter feeling all around. So the clicks feel a little bit more consistent over here on the M7, but again, I've been using both of these models quite a bit, going back and forth between them, and they really do feel identical. Again, same thing on the scroll. I don't want to bore you to death on that. All these scrolls feel similar, and a little bit lighter on the clicks here. And the side buttons on this, they honestly feel really good. Not a whole lot of pre, a little bit of post there. You can kind of push it in the shell, not a whole lot, but again, no play on the side. Pre-travel feels great with just a little bit of post-travel on both of these. And when dropping both of these on my scale, the balance also feels great on both of them. Again, these both have a 500 milliamp hour battery in them. The Pro's coming in at 55.8, where the Ultra coming in a little bit lighter for whatever reason, 55.1 grams. Again, I would like to see them come out with maybe an extreme version of these in the future, putting a little bit more of a lightweight battery in these, keeping the 3950 sensor in here and just trying to maximize not only the performance and feeling of this, but getting the weight down just a little bit more. And when it comes to this mouse, the closest shape that this compares to is it's honestly just kind of a U2 clone in a sense. If you look down here at the bottom, the curve profile on both of these looks very similar to one another. I do feel like it does curve out a little bit more aggressively down here in the rear. The one thing I do want to note about these is it does try to have that thumb groove that the U2 has. I do feel like the thumb groove feels a little bit more natural on the U2, where I do feel like for whatever reason, the thumb groove on this feels a little bit more aggressive. Nothing that's that much of a major deal, but just something I kind of noticed between both of them. But everything about the flatness on the top profile with the curve going down to the sides, and even looking at both of these next to each other on the side, they do look very similar to one another. All right, and last but not least, we're going to talk about the L7. This is probably my favorite one out of all of them. As you can see here, I do have the L7, the L7 Pro, and the L7 Ultra. And really, these mice are actually more similar to one another than different. They both have the exact same layout as the previous mice I just talked about, with the A7 and the M7 with the power button and DPI. They all three have the exact same skate design, and really in the hands, all three of these feel similar to one another. They'll have the same coating. It does feel pretty grippy, and the only real difference about these is with the original base model, the L7. This one does have a 3395 sensor in it, and this is actually using Omron mechanical switches. The difference with the Pro model is that this is also using the 3395 sensor, but this one does have the Omron optical switches in it, which I do personally prefer over the mechanicals myself personally. And then last but not least, you have the Ultra. The Ultra also does have the Omron opticals in it, but this one is sporting the flagship 3950 sensor. I had the Pro version before I had just the original L7 and the L7 Ultra, so I did put a ton of time on this actually. Once I first got this mouse, I really did like it a lot. I did try and put a lot of focus on the L7 since this is the cheapest model, and really the feeling of all these feel nearly identical to one another. Like the clicks on this, really solid click quality. You get like almost no pre or post travel clicking here from the center. You get just a little bit more play up here in the front, and you can make contact with the base. I do feel like the clicks feel a little bit more consistent with the mechanical switches if you were to click somewhere back here in the rear, but all around these clicks just feel just a little bit more heavier. But I mean, the build quality on this, all three just feel the same. You get like no left to right, no type of rocking or anything like that. And even the same thing, I've already done a video here on the Pro, but the Ultra Same thing, just really solid clicks, not a whole lot of pre or post travel. These, again, these Omron opticals, they get a little bit more like hollow feeling and a little bit heavier back here from the rear if you're to play that way. But yeah, everything about the clicks on these feel great. Same thing with the scroll with these other ones. A little bit more stiff on the center click here. And I do kind of feel like on this Ultra that the steps, they do feel just a little bit louder and more pronounced for whatever reason. But even the side buttons on all of these, you get like clicking them from the back, you get almost no play, maybe just very minimal. This one you don't even get a whole lot of post travel. It hits a pretty solid wall. Get just a very minor amount of wobbling there, but even to come over here on the base model, really solid side buttons. A little bit of post, not a whole lot. Very minimal movement there, front to back. So yeah, the coating, shell integrity on all three of these models. Again, it feels a little flexible if you're to push really hard here in the middle. Nothing that I noticed too much of it as I've been using it in game. Even squeezing up here in the front, you get just a little bit of bending, but not a whole lot. So yeah, the build quality for the weight of all these does feel pretty solid. I'm not going to talk about the shape of these because I've already done a dedicated video to just this mouse. This is pretty much a X2 mini clone. I'll go and put a link down in the description for those of you that are interested in seeing that. But with this L7, I did actually put these Unusual Way sports dot skates on here that I've been testing them out. So with the dot skates coming in at 39.5 grams for the L7. L7 Pro with the stock skates on here, 40.8 grams. And then the L7 Ultra with the stock skates is going to come in the exact same at 40.8 grams. So conveniently, all of these different models of mice that I've talked about on the channel today, they're using this exact same software. Really simple to use. Over here on the front page is where it allows you to make updates to the firmware and the dongle. Some of these, when I did get them out of the box, it did show that they need to update on there, so it seems to be working pretty nicely. Over here on the next page where you do have functions to change the click options on all your mice. And you do want to pay attention down here in the bottom right hand corner. On this is the page where you have the key to bounce timing. All these mice came out of the box set to 8 milliseconds. So you do need to come in here to drop this down to get the lowest click latency on these mice possible. I dropped all mine down to 0 milliseconds and didn't notice any issues. Even with the Omron mechanical switches, they seem to be playing very nice for me. Over on this next page is where it allows you to adjust your DPI and set your polling rate. Then you have a macro tab, and then finally over here on the config tab, it does allow you to adjust your liftoff distance. For the sensor performance, I've been generally leaving all these off. Some people prefer to use motion sync or not. Really, that's just up to you what you prefer. I've been doing all this testing with this esports mode open, and for this game safe mode, I've been leaving this off or in the closed position. And here is the rest of the functionalities that the software offers. All right, so when it comes to the performance of these mice, for some reason, these older versions here, this A5, this only has up to a 4000 hertz wireless polling rate. You have to plug it in to use 8K, but the G3 Ultra and this AX5 model right here, again, all of these are using the Realtek chip. For whatever reason, when I hooked these three up to my XLAT system, I wasn't able to get it to work and get any numbers out of it. It wasn't giving me any response at all to A5. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to bring you guys any numbers on these. Again, I did try really hard to test them out. I did, however, test all these newer models. I was getting the same numbers on the XLAT across all these different various models. All right, guys, so that wraps things up with all of these Mchose mice. With these three models up here, I do kind of wish that they would update these and kind of make these more similar to the build of these mice, having the same coating. You know, this A5 right here would really be cool if they can try and get this down a lighter weight, around the mid 40s or even like 49 grams would be great. This one is pretty good as it is. Honestly, really impressed with this. I did notice they did come out the V2 version of this. I was unable to get my hands on it. If I'm able to get my hands on one in the future, I'll let you know if there's any differences. And again, with this G3, I would like to see them make some updates on this, try and get it closer to the build of these and try and bring that weight down a little bit more. But aside from that, really impressed with the A7, M7, and I would say my favorite out of all of these is going to be all of these, the L7, L7 Pro, and the L7 Ultra. My choice out of all of these, just because it has a 3950 sensor in it and the Omron opticals, I have been preferring the Ultra myself. I'm going to stick with using this out of all of these being my favorite one. But again, all these really do feel good, and I even was really impressed with how solid this A7 Ultra feels, just going back and comparing it to the G Pro Superlight. Again, even though these do have a little bit of that thinner plastic, the way that I grip these mice and use them, they've been working great for me. So if you are looking at picking one of these up, I would just clearly recommend going off of whatever shape seems like it's going to work out best for you. But aside from that, I've been really enjoying the updates on what they've been doing over on Mchose, and I really feel like they are moving in the right direction. All right, guys, so if you have any questions or feel like I left anything out, please let me know down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed watching this video and are interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please drop this video a like and subscribe to my channel. And thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.